Chapter 3. Do you think it was a good idea to leave your door unlocked? Leah asked a few minutes later as she drove the sheriff's department jeep toward the middle of the island and the bridge that would take them to the mainland. Like I told you, a courier should arrive in the next hour to pick up that package I left just inside the door. She had made a quick call to Bishop to alert him to the location of the package. You could have left the package in your rental car. Yeah, but doing that was a bit too visible for my taste. Leah sent her a glance. I probably shouldn't ask, but did it have anything to do with what's going on here? Riley shrugged. Maybe. I'll know more when Quantico reports back. At least I hope so. She had debated, but in the end Riley decided against confiding her memory loss to Leah. Not yet, at any rate. She was independent enough that even Bishop had never been able to match her with a permanent partner, and that independence demanded that she keep her current vulnerability to herself as long as possible. Plus, it was quite simply a reasonable precaution until she could wrap her mind around whatever was going on here. Leah sent her another look. You know, you've been awfully secretive the last week or so. Have I? It was more an honest question than a mere response. Something Riley hoped the other woman wouldn't pick up on. I'd say so. Gordon thinks so, too. He thinks you've either found something or figured out something that's making you very uneasy. He told you that? Last night in the shower, and again this morning at the breakfast table. He's worried about you, Riley? Of course, Gordon always did love redheads. That's why I can trust Leah. They're involved and he vouched for her. Aloud and somewhat offhandedly, she said, Gordon's worried about me for years. Leah grinned faintly. Yeah, he's mentioned that a few times. Says you keep digging when any rational person would throw away the shovel. That's why he wanted you here, even knowing he'd worry the whole time. And now we've got this murder. I'd say the stakes just went up, and maybe we've all got something to worry about. Is the Sheriff Schwartz a murder? I'm sure, and I've never seen a murdered body before, not outside the textbooks. Believe me, Riley, it's a murder. The guy's hanging from a tree over that possible altar in the woods, and he didn't hang himself. Who's the Vic? Well, we don't exactly know yet, and it may take a while to find out. His head is gone. Riley looked at the deputy, conscious of a cold finger gliding up her spine. There is something eerily familiar about this, and it wasn't found nearby? Leah grimaced. Not so far when I left. We've been searching, but it's just a little patch of trees, you know that, and I'm guessing that if we haven't found it by now, we won't. Not in those woods, anyway. Nodding, Riley turned her gaze forward again. There was something nagging at the back of her mind, but she had no idea if it was a memory or some kind of pertinent knowledge. Or something utterly irrelevant and useless, of course, which was what lots of nagging things tended to be. Leah, the sheriff still thinks I'm here on vacation, all right? As far as I know. Then why call me to a crime scene? Apparently he knows you're with the SCU, and he considers this a special crime, being as how we haven't had a murder in these parts for, a decade or more. Death, sure, even a killing or 3, but not like this, not anything like this. Bradley wasn't very happy about the sheriff's knowledge, although she also wasn't surprised. Of course, he had likely checked on her, and any law enforcement officer at his level could easily learn that she was assigned to the Special Crimes Unit. That should, however, be all he could learn. Before she could ask, Leah said, from the way he talked, I gather he doesn't know what your specialty is. The occult stuff, I mean. Because this one has to be occult-related, and he didn't say that was why he wanted you at the scene. Just for your general expertise in investigating crimes. All he knows is that you're an FBI agent working with the unit that uses unorthodox methods to investigate unusual crimes. And this one is definitely unusual. He knows I'm psychic. He doesn't believe in psychics, but there's an election coming up in the fall, and Jake Ballard wants to be reelected. What he doesn't want is to be accused by the voters of not taking advantage of any possibly helpful source in investigating a brutal murder. An FBI agent staying in the area has to be counted as an excellent source, no matter which unit she belongs to or what extra senses she claims to have. Leah shook her head. I assumed you two had talked about stuff like that. Why? Well, it is the normal sort of chit-chat for two cops on a date. Oh, shit. Then again, Leah continued, clearly oblivious of having delivered a shock. It seems you ex-army types tend to talk less than the rest of us, at least about your work. I've been sleeping with Gordon for nearly a year now, damn near living with him, and he still won't tell me what wakes him up in a cold sweat some nights. He don't want you to know the ugly stuff, Riley murmured. Things he's seen, done. Yeah, I get that. Still feels like he's shutting me out of a very big part of his life. Past life, over and done with. Let it go. Riley forced a smile when the other woman looked at her. Advice. I know you didn't ask, but I'm offering anyway. The monsters under the bed and in the closet, leave them be. If he wants to show them to you, he will. But that may not be for a long time, if ever. And it isn't about trust? Riley shook her head. It's about scars, and about giving them time to fade. 20 years of scars aren't going to fade in a hurry, if at all. Well, good men tend to hold on to their bad memories. I'd be a lot more worried about him if he didn't wake up sometimes in a cold sweat. You know what he's been through, Leah said. Some of it, not all of it. But they're his stories. He has to be the one to tell me. That's the way it works. Sorry. No, it's okay. I get it. Riley thought the other woman probably did get it. She was a cop, and even in this small coastal town, would likely encounter a few horror stories of her own during the course of her career, starting possibly with what she'd seen today. A silence fell between the two women. Riley wanted to break it, but there didn't seem to be any good, reasonably casual way to guide the conversation back to her date or dates with the sheriff. Dates? Jesus, what on earth had possessed her to do that? With a reliable source inside the sheriff's department, it didn't seem likely that she'd gone out with him on a fact-finding mission, especially since he knew who and what she was. What he wouldn't confide professionally, he wasn't likely to confide personally, not if he was like most of the cops she'd known. Was it personal? Had she set aside the training and preferences of a lifetime to go out with a law enforcement officer while she was investigating occurrences in his town? Investigating possibly him? What would have compelled her to do something so out of character for her? With her busy life, she barely dated at all, but to date someone during an investigation. A sudden, uneasy suspicion surfaced in her mind as she abruptly recalled the fleeting memory of quiet voices and a lingering touch out on the deck of her house. Surely to goodness, she hadn't gone further than a few casual dates. She hadn't taken a lover. No, that would be so totally out of character. It was unheard of for her. But what if? In a situation so torn by uncertainty, how could she discount the possibility? And most important of all, what if neither her memories nor her clairvoyance kicked in when she saw the man again? How was she supposed to fake her way through that? The woods were dense enough that getting a vehicle to the clearing near the center was virtually impossible. So Leah parked her Jeep near the other police vehicles and they got out. Riley had another flash of memory and said, somebody's dog found the body, right? Just like one found all that stuff in the clearing last week, Leah confirmed. Different dog, though. Riley paused to study the break in the fence, ignoring a bored deputy stationed there to prevent the idly curious from entering the woods at this point. It wasn't a particularly strong fence, meant more as a border delineating the park from the woods than a barrier to hold a determined animal in or out. She frowned as she half-turned to look back at the area used for local pet owners. Odd, she murmured. What's odd? Leah asked. Riley kept her voice low. Rituals aren't meant to be public, especially occult rituals. And even more especially if you mean to sacrifice something or kill somebody. You don't want outsiders watching or even knowing what's going on. Makes sense. Yeah, so why choose this place? There are patches of woods farther from town and much more private. Forests with a lot more acreage that would offer far greater secrecy. Places where a fire wouldn't be seen and where local dog owners don't bring their pets every single day. Something special about this patch of woods? Leah guessed. You did say that group of boulders look like a natural altar, or something old that was used a long time ago. Maybe that's it? Maybe, but Riley wasn't convinced. Still, she continued with Leah through the break in the fence and into the woods. She was trying very hard to focus and concentrate, to settle and ground herself, so she could get through what lay ahead without making a fool of herself or betraying herself. Professional, that was the ticket. Cool, detached, and professional. Whatever the reason she dated Jake Ballard, he would expect her to behave like a professional at a crime scene, however unofficial her presence. Riley remembered all that sexy underwear and winced. Christ, she hoped he expected an FBI agent and not a lover. Surely she'd remembered she'd taken a lover in the last couple of weeks. Surely. Grand Central Station, Leah muttered as they reached the clearing. There was plenty of activity, all right, and Riley was aware of a fleeting, though resigned wish that she had been able to see the scene before it was trampled by many feet. Trained feet for the most part, but not specially trained, and it showed. Rather than join them, Riley stood where she was at the edge of the clearing, her hands in the front pockets of her jeans, and just looked for several minutes. She ignored the uniformed deputies and technicians moving about, ignored the snatches of conversation she heard, closed out everything except the scene of a murder. Leah had been right. No one could see this and not know they were dealing with murder. Riley looked at what the killer had left, at the headless body that was still hanging by its wrists, at the blood-spattered rocks below, at the evidence of a fire nearby, which a technician was currently photographing. It all looked familiar. Riley, thanks for coming. She turned her head at the sound of his voice, holding on to her professional detachment with an effort. It was a nice voice. It was a nice package of the tall, dark, and handsome variety, with piercing blue eyes thrown in just for gilding. Okay, so he was gorgeous. Maybe that was why she dated him. Sheriff Jake Ballard wore his uniform with an air that said he knew he looked good in it, and he walked with an authority that wasn't quite a swagger, and he had this sort of smile, even here and now, that nature had designed to charm the female of the species. Riley was hardly immune. Hey, she said, nice goings-on in such a pretty little town. Tell me about it. He shook his head, adding, sorry to pull you out of your vacation, but frankly, I wanted an opinion from someone who probably knows a lot more about this sort of thing than any of us. And you thought I might? He looked sheepish, and Riley tried not to believe it was because he knew it was a good expression for him. Okay, so I checked up on you when you arrived. I didn't mention it later because I thought you'd tell me about it in your own time. It? The Special Crimes Unit? It isn't exactly a secret in law enforcement circles, you know. I made a few calls and learned a bit more than the standard FBI line of bullshit double talk. Taking a chance, Riley said, you don't believe in the paranormal. His eyebrows lifted. Is that a problem? Not for me, no. It's the sort of thing we run into more often than not. I imagine you would. But if it isn't something you believe in, then how much value can my opinion have? You're an experienced investigator, and your unit deals with murder on a regular basis, yes? Yeah, I believe in that. Your experience, that's enough for me. Riley looked at him and tried to find a single memory. Nothing. As for her clairvoyant sense, it was as absent as her memory. All she knew was what her usual but slightly dulled senses were telling her. He was gorgeous, he had a nice voice, and he was wearing polo cologne. Riley, I need your help, Jake Ballard said, or at least your expertise. I can call your office, make it official so you're on the clock. No need to waste vacation time. She hesitated, then said, if you make it official, my boss will probably want to send another agent or two down here. We seldom work alone. The sheriff grimaced. That I'm not so crazy about. A major FBI presence wouldn't sit well with the civic leaders if we scare away the summer visitors. He didn't have to complete that sentence. Towns like Castle and Opal Island weren't as dependent on summer dollars as the northern coast areas were. Winter this far south was mild and brief, and visitors came year-round. But the summer season still produced the most income through higher rentals and for other area businesses. Her voice mild, Riley said, "Well, I imagine my boss will be okay if we keep this semi-official." "Yeah, sure he will. Bishop is not going to be happy that we've got a murder now." And why the hell hadn't she explained that fact when she called him back to explain where the package for the courier would be found? Man, what is wrong with me? "I can explain the situation," she continued, pushing her way through uncertainty, "and I'd be on the books as an advisor to your office, not an investigator." "Suits me," he said promptly. "Look, the doc wants me to cut down the body." "No," she softened that with a smile. "It would really help if you could clear most of your people out for a bit. Not long, just a few minutes. I like to wander around, take a closer look at the scene before anything more is changed." For the psychic vibes, his voice wasn't quite mocking. "For whatever I can pick up," she returned pleasantly. He eyed her for a moment, then shrugged. "Okay, sure. My forensics team has done all they can do, and goodness knows we've got plenty of shots of the scene. But the people I've got combing the woods aren't done yet. No reason to call them in. I just need the immediate area around the body clear." He nodded and stepped away to begin issuing orders to send his people temporarily back to their vehicles. Leah, who had stood silently nearby, murmured, "What I can't figure out is if he really wants your help or just wants a reason that Ash can't argue with to keep you close." Riley said. "Who the hell is Ash?"